Welcome to Backstage Money, real world finance for musicians. I'm your host, Jason P. Powers, and this is where music and money collide with honest stories and practical lessons from people who make it work. So let's get to it. Today, I am joined by Jack McCarthy, entrepreneur and co-founder of IndieX at Indepreneur, the agency that helps Grammy winners, multi-platinum acts, and indies alike generate direct-to-fan e-commerce revenue. His path runs from the Philadelphia scene to the road as a guitar tech turned touring guitarist to leading a team that builds and monetizes fan bases artists actually own. Under Jack's leadership, IndieX has driven millions in direct-to-consumer sales by filling the revenue gap the industry often ignores, and I'm excited to have that conversation today. Today, we're going to dig into the baseline philosophy for treating your act like a business, why owning your data matters, and practical ways to get off the revenue roller coaster. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I've seen your guys' stuff around, and I was looking to reach out to you, and then you reached out to me, and we started talking, and I was like, this has worked out great. I'm excited for it. So yeah, I'm excited.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have these conversations, and I love what you guys are doing out there.
Oh, thanks so much, man. I'm excited to be here. Definitely stoked to get into the weeds of all of it with you.
Yes. So let's dive in. I want to talk about a little bit of one of the main conversations that comes up is this feast-or-famine cycle that artists go through. And that's sort of how you guys started, right? It was off of this idea of how can we help curb this a little bit, right?
For sure. Yeah. That was one of the big areas that started Indepreneur as a whole, but certainly the agency side of our company, IndieX, is really founded based on, and a lot of our strategy is really built around helping artists pick up revenue that is often left on the table, and really to help them stabilize a lot of the monetization roller coaster that exists for artists and bands, which looks a lot like launch a record, spike in revenue comes down, go on tour, spike in revenue comes down. And there's these flat lines when the revenue comes down on that roller coaster, and helping artists to stabilize that is a lot of the focus that we put our time and effort and energy into, in addition to maximizing those spikes. But it's really looking to build sustainability and a bit more of a stable baseline, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Indepreneur itself and how that got started, and then the IndieX side, and help us understand what we're talking about. And then I have some good stuff I want us to chew on today.
For sure. Yeah. So Indepreneur has been around since 2017. We started as a company. My business partner, Kyle, started Indepreneur back in 2017 with the early release of Indie Pro, some of our foundational trainings and the community that we started building of artists that were looking to learn digital marketing. Kyle, Circa for short, he was getting his footing in digital marketing, or had gotten his footing in digital marketing in the tech space, specifically like websites and app building. And at the time, he was working in a studio as a studio manager, also then helping apply marketing to artists that he was, seeing through the studio, and got into consulting, got into teaching. In the fledgling Indepreneur was built at the same time I was working off the road after being on the road as a touring guitar player, a guitar tech, working in the studio in Philly. I was cutting my teeth in digital marketing, working with small businesses, nonprofits, online businesses. And we met totally by chance when I saw an Indepreneur Facebook ad. Actually, it was one of the first Facebook ads that Cirque was running for the company to sell one of the initial digital marketing trainings that we taught, which was called the Fan Finder method. I saw that training probably within maybe the first 2 weeks that it was running, bought the program because I was like, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. I like him. Yeah. I think he seems pretty cool. We got talking, we got to becoming friendly, started following each other's journey. And then we partnered up about a year later when he and I were talking, and he was like, hey, I'm building up the agency side of the company, IndieX. I know you have experience building agencies. What do you think about working together on this? And it was a match made in heaven. We've been doing it ever since. And so that was how Indepreneur started, kind of from the from the ground up. And I came in and started working with the team on, well, started working on building a team and building up the infrastructure and the processes, the systems and the strategies that we use at IndieX specifically. And so we've been doing that ever since. It's been a very interesting twisting and turning kind of journey, lots of changes, lots of challenges, certainly after 2020, how that changed the music industry landscape for sure. But it's been a lot of fun. That's how Indepreneur has gotten its start and what's brought us to where we are today.
Yeah. So give me the rundown of, you have kind of different, I would say, divisions, if you will, right, of Indepreneur,
Sure. Yep.
and IndieX is a specific side of it. And so talk a little bit about what IndieX specifically does in contrast to the collective, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. IndieX is what I always refer to as the agency arm of Indepreneur. This is where we specifically are working with artists, bands, and their teams on helping them pick up missing e-commerce revenue. And we're typically working with larger artists, say north of 500,000 fans across social media is usually a kind of like a baseline metric. So we're working with established artists that have an audience that the monetization, the active monetization side of their business really hasn't been tapped into, or they're looking to scale it further. And we do that through digital marketing. So things like paid traffic, paid social media advertising, email marketing, text marketing, and all of the e-commerce infrastructure that goes along with those things. That's really where we build our focus and our strategy. And then our team executes all of that work for our clients. So we get to do that at IndieX. And then the larger additional parts of Indepreneur are on the consulting and music marketing education side of things. We have Indie Founder, which is a consulting and coaching program where we work with artists who they're getting their footing, maybe not in a position where agency services make sense for them yet as far as their size, but they need some help and some strategy. So our strategists from the agency will come down and work with artists one-on-one and their teams one-on-one to provide them with, a direction and a strategy to go after. And then on the more fledgling artist side of things, for artists who are looking to learn this stuff, maybe build a fan base for the very first time or start to monetize a fan base that's slowly growing, we have Indie Pro, which is a community, and it's a training library as well, where we teach a lot of the same processes that we advise on and build for clients at IndieX and Indie Founder. We teach those same processes to artists, same strategies to artists in a format that makes sense to them. So we have video trainings, we have workshops, and a community where we do all of that. So those are kind of like the three divisions of Indepreneur as a whole. I spend a lot of my time at IndieX, and that's kind of what we've been building all along.
Yeah. So we talk about kind of your size of preference for onboarding, 500,000, let's say, followers across the board. And I think to some of us, that sounds like a boatload of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of listeners, I'm sure, going, well, I mean, I don't know what it'd be like to have 500,000 followers. I mean,
Yeah.
how hard do you think it is for people to build up 500,000 followers? And you're talking across all platforms, not just like Facebook has
Yep.
to have 500,000 followers. TikTok has to have a half.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically across the board. How hard is it? That's a great question. I don't know if anyone's ever specifically asked it that way to me. It's definitely not easy. I mean, by no stretch of the imagination is it easy to build up listeners, followers, fans. I'll say this, the biggest challenge I think that artists face right now is when it comes to building up an audience, the first thing that you need to learn how to do is to create content around your music, how to leverage your music, the thing that you make, in a way that captures people's attention, that stops their scroll, that creates virality, really. And I don't mean it in like kind of the trite way of being like, well, you just need to figure out how to go viral. What I really mean is you need to
Do that special
analyze.
dance in front of the video.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What I really mean is like you need to go and you need to analyze what's out there in the wild that audiences are resonating with online, what's capturing people's attention, what's stopping the scroll, what's getting people to pay attention to an artist that might look similar to you, and then take what you see and apply it to your own creative taste and brand and find a way to emulate in, again, a tasteful way
Mhm.
that same sort of viral appeal and then apply that to your content. If you can start to learn how to do that consistently, that's how over time you'll make more stuff consistently that attracts an audience. And once you do that, once you know how to do that, the cool thing is like you can turn to things like paid advertising online. You can pour gasoline on the fire to start building up that audience, and that can happen slowly slowly without viral moments, or very quickly with viral moments.
Mhm.
And some of that is luck, some of that is, perfect timing, lightning in a bottle kind of moments, and some of it is just like consistency and strategy. So that's kind of a roundabout way of answering maybe the how hard with the
Yes.
here's what I would recommend you do.
Mhm. There's probably a level of thought process for musicians that I think everybody wants to get that stuff out there and go viral, right? Because that's the big thing. How do we go viral? When we're
Yep.
talking
Yeah.
specifically social media, but the research, okay, well, how can I create content that will catch on? And I think in my humble opinion, is there's a maybe some disconnect for artists that are trying to post stuff that this is what I would like to stop. This is what I would like, and so therefore everyone will like it, kind of thing, right? And there's a little
Yep.
bit of a misinterpretation that can happen there, I think.
It's really true. One of the key things I think is to take yourself out of your own shoes and try to put yourself by way of research into the shoes of your potential fans. And the reality is oftentimes we as artists don't look like our fans. In some cases we do, but not
Mhm.
always. There's plenty of artists who their fans may think, act, and like things that are vastly different from us, you know? And the ability to look at other artists who might be similar to us is oftentimes like a great first starting point for digging into like, well, okay, what do what are the fans of these other artists that I have a hunch that their fans might like what I'm about?
Mhm.
What are they digging? What are they into? What's capturing their attention? If you start there, it kind of naturally gently moves you away from the wondering of like, well, I think I would like this. It's like anything in marketing, you want to take yourself out of your own head and try to put yourself in the head of your potential customers.
All right. So we mentioned earlier about kind of the feast or famine cycles that people go through, and that can be triggered through, like you mentioned, through touring. We spike and then drop, record sales, record launch, spike and then drop. Let's talk about for a minute, how do we level that out a little bit in our careers? IndieX got started a little bit out of this idea to balance that out a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Help people figure out how do we level this feast or famine cycle out a little bit and address that.
So I love this question because it's one of the like founding principles of IndieX as an agency. And where this idea really came from for us was looking at other businesses outside of music and seeing specifically like e-commerce businesses and looking to see like what's going on under the hood of a successful e-commerce business. And when you look at it, it's always on marketing. It is consistency in promoting offers and products. And when we look at that and then compare that to what you often see in this feast or famine roller coaster of revenue in music for artists, there are some stark differences to the practices that are done. And just taking some of those strategies that are deployed by online brands, e-commerce companies, and really lots of other kind of businesses as well, but let's just pick on them and use their examples. When you take those and you bring them over to music, you can do a lot. Some of the ways that we like to do it is through creating consistent, recurring sales promotion calendars. So what we're looking at is we're looking at the milestones throughout an artist year. It might look like just regular holiday scheduling, the major holidays that every online business that is successful is making sure that they hit, looking at things as simple as Black Friday, but also looking at the other holidays throughout the calendar year, looking at holidays that might be made up to the artist, the anniversary dates of certain records, the band's birthday, the members' birthdays, fan created holidays. These are all sort of milestones that you can tap into. Certainly things like pre-tour sales promotions, post-tour sales promotions. We love running things like tour blowout sales and things like that. These are all things that you build into the marketing calendar for an artist to create a bit of stability in revenue, because it's active. It's work that you're actually doing to create that revenue. You're bringing it into the business, as opposed to the more passive revenue that comes from things like streaming, or might come through brand partnerships, or um, licensing deals. These are like active monetization efforts. And when you build them into a promotional cycle throughout a year, or, beyond a year, then that's where you start to smooth out the revenue spikes that happen with things like album launches or tours.
hmm And this is in relation to things like merch. I mean, right?
Yep,
Get your online store going, have plenty of merch options,
for
have
sure.
your
Yeah.
supplemental stuff, your tour blowout. I love that. I love that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the two biggest product categories that I look towards when it comes to e-commerce for artists really is like physical music products, CDs, vinyls, even cassettes. In some markets, fans are kind of like ravenous for that sort of music memorabilia. You might even think of it as. Well, and then soft goods, shirts, hoodies, and then there's kind of the intangibles that can go along with that kind of stuff, where you're adding on value to your offers by signing things, by making it personalized, by bundling it with bonus items that might be exclusive to a special offer. And think about, more of the unscalable sort of personalized merch that might be things like set lists from your most recent tour that you're ripping from the stage and
Yeah.
just keeping off to the side for fans. That's the kind of stuff that can really create awesome monetization events for an artist if they choose to utilize it well.
Yeah.
But those are the big two. And then that third one is kind of overlaid over them.
There's been a big boost, obviously, in vinyls. The vinyl record business has boomed, man. It outsold CDs for the last, I think, 3 years in a row now,
Yeah.
and that's a big one for people if you can get that done, and stock it so you can sell it, right? Obviously, I love how this approach is more than I think artists know it, but we don't act on it. Is this is more of an afterthought in general, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because I think the primary focus becomes when it comes to sales, like let's just call it all merch sales. When it comes to merch sales, it's usually at the show, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And what's that table going to look like? And what are we selling at the show, et cetera? And then go home and that's it,
Yep.
you know? And I think a lot can be said about having that online store and having ways for fans to access that throughout the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much revenue generated through touring for sure. It's just that there's so much opportunity to be making money when you're not on tour, that through e-commerce, that's just left off to the side. Like the
Mhm.
bare minimum is often what you see in music. It's like, oh, I have an online store with maybe a few products in it, and that's about it. Sometimes not even that. I'll tell you an interesting story of about a year and a half or 2 years ago. We did a study on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. We did it for about a quarter. We signed up for the email list of all the artists on the Hot 100. We visited their stores. We checked out the advertising that they were running. We hung out on their mailing list and analyzed our inboxes when emails were coming through for the things that they were promoting, for the offers that they were making to their fans, what they were selling. We looked at their stores to see how well stocked they were. And some of the data that we got from that was just fascinating. There were so many artists that you would go to their store and there was no products on it at all. Everything was sold out. So the opportunity for them to sell anything wasn't even there, because the most recent products were from their last album launch 6 months ago, and there was nothing else for fans to browse and buy, even if they wanted to. So many
Mhm.
artists were not making any efforts to sell anything. You would sign up to their email list and nothing would happen. I wouldn't get
Mhm.
a single email. And during that time, actually, it was really fascinating. Memorial Day fell during that time here in the States. And of the of all of the artists that we signed up for the email list on the Hot 100 charts at the time, only 3 ran a sales promotion during what is typically a pretty big selling retail holiday, and only 3 of them ran a sales promotion of any kind, and only one of those 3 sent more than 1 email. And when that
Interesting.
happened, my jaw kind of dropped, and I was like, "Man," and these are huge artists, right? These are
Mhm.
massive artists that have big teams behind them spending lots of money, their money, on marketing and not really doing a very good job.
Mhm.
So, when
Mhm.
things like that happen, it's kind of validating that this has been the pattern in the music industry for a very long time, and the standard practices that make online businesses strong still aren't being followed, adhered to, or even looked at closely at all. It's really it's fascinating. In some ways, it it gives us the principle of feeling like we've got a mission at IndieX to help
Yeah.
artists really do the things that they should be doing that can benefit them. So that's
Yeah.
cool. That feels
Yeah.
good. But on the flip side, on the other hand of that, like it still stings when you see it because it's like, oh man, like how is this still happening?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think it too, it's important to note for people that having merch, this kind of having an opportunity for fans to purchase things from you, actually might be step 2. Step 1 is at least get something out there that you're capturing information.
Yes.
At least, like if you're doing nothing, at least start capturing that information so you could utilize it, you know, and
It's so
then
true,
letting people
especially
know.
it's so true, especially for artists that are starting to grow, right? Maybe you're someone who you don't have that 500,000 person audience, right? And the idea of getting there is daunting, and it's like, how do I even do that? That seems really difficult, and I don't know if I'll ever get there. Well, let me clue you in on something. There's plenty of opportunity to build revenue in your music business, in your career with smaller audiences, but you have to start owning the data sooner. You have to start collecting contact information, having a direct one-to-one channel where you can communicate with your fans who are potential customers and your fans that are customers and repeat customers. Because if you can't do that and you're relying on the social media algorithms to be able to reach your fans, then you're going to constantly be at a disadvantage because that's going to the reach is going to keep getting smaller. Advertising to an audience online is only going to get more expensive, and the best way to be able to get in touch with your fans to make them offers is through channels like email and text. That's only going to become more true. So the sooner that you can start doing that, the better.
Mhm. You, when we talked before we started recording, you have a good philosophy, maybe we would call it, around growing artists and how to look at yourself the same way as you would look at any business. And maybe talk about that for a minute, especially we've kind of touched on it, but just this idea of yes, you're doing music. Yes, that's all you want to do. If you could help it, just focus on the music. Let somebody else handle the peripherals. That would be
Yeah.
ideal. That's where you want to get to, maybe. But even some of the best musicians in the world have some business sense.
Yeah.
And you
One
have
of
to.
the Yeah, absolutely. I think there's two big things that come to my mind these days when I think about talking with artists about treat looking at yourself like a business. There's two big facets here that I think are really important, especially for artists that are getting into the music industry for the first time. Maybe you're starting to build that audience, or maybe you've got a big audience and maybe it just happened and you're starting to get attention from players in the industry, managers, record labels, people are courting you. If you know about business going into those kinds of conversations, you are far less likely to be able to be taken advantage of. And
Hmm.
that's really important that's just like any other business. You don't go into business ventures, partnerships, or joint ventures or anything. You don't strike up business deals without knowing about your business, about what you're doing, knowing your numbers, what's happening, and trying to have some leverage. So that's point number one, is like looking at yourself like a business and having some business sense and starting to educate yourself on the business of music is certainly really important for not getting a bad deal or getting taken advantage of,
Yeah.
or finding yourself in a position where you have a team and you don't really know what they're doing. So you don't know if they're doing it well. And that's
Hmm.
really important too. And the second thing, and this is more actually into the building of business in your music career, is the shift from thinking of your fans just as fans and starting to think of them as customers. Because when you make that transition, suddenly it becomes less about faceless numbers on the internet and people in a crowd, and about customers that you can serve and figure out ways to provide value to them in the things that you offer, in the experiences that you create, in the way that your music and everything associated with it impacts them. If you can do that, if you can make that shift, all of a sudden you're now thinking, what can I be doing next for my fans? And where's
Hmm.
the exchange of value in that? It's not about being transactional really, but certainly transactions are inherent in it. So then you can think about, if I want to make something really cool for my fans, go back to the vinyl example. If I want to make really cool vinyl pressings for an anniversary of my first record, and I want to limit it to only a certain number and do some really cool exclusive stuff for a select few of my fans because I know that they will love it, then I can charge money for that. And my fans will happily pay money for that. And I know that about them because they support me. When you start to think of your fans like customers and not just like an amorphous audience, that's
Hmm.
the kind of thinking that unlocks. And I think that's a really big shift for artists to make.
Hmm. Well, I think there's some perspective of maybe perceived disrespect, for lack of better words, to perceive your fans as customers, right? Because they're like, oh, but they love me and they support me, and so that's my fan base. But then to in your head say, if I start treating them like customers, I think there's some disconnect that happens that goes, well, I don't feel I feel like I'm taking advantage of them now in some way, right? Because there's this now I'm like you said, making it transactional in a way. But I think, like you said, it's a good perspective. Shift that just a little bit, tweak that just a little bit. And now instead of not just your customers, how can I serve my customers? How can I create value, more value for my customers so that they want to keep coming back, right? And so I'm doing good for my customers. You're not just treating them like a transactional piece, faceless thing that you're just trying to sell something to and you don't care about them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If you truly believe in what you're making and what you're bringing into the world as a creator, which I think every artist, musician, band does. They love what they're doing. Every artist that I've ever consulted with from day one that I've been doing this, and I've been a musician my whole life, so I've been talking to musicians forever about all sorts of things, from recording to writing songs to making music and playing shows together to marketing. Every artist that I have ever known or met believes so strongly in the thing that they're doing, and that they think it is not only impacting them, but is impacting the people that listen to it. And if you truly believe that, I think that when considering the shift from fan thinking to fan and customer thinking, the worst thing that you can do for your fans is not sell to them and think to them as a customer. If you really think that what you're making is impactful and real and valuable to the world, like, you're doing a disservice by not telling your fans
Mhm.
about it in as many ways as you can. Like, you're holding something back from them then.
Yeah. Let's talk for a minute about, you mentioned it sort of in past, the phrase owning your data and
Yeah,
owning your
yeah,
data and fan base. Let's talk about that for a minute. What do you
sure.
mean by that?
What I mean by that is twofold. One, and I think I mentioned this, like, you don't want to be a slave to the social media algorithms, right? As you build up an audience, on Instagram, let's say, right? You have 1 million followers, fans on Instagram. That's great. Instagram could go away tomorrow. If you have 400,000 listeners on Spotify, that's great. Can you contact them? Not
Mhm.
easily. And
Right,
so when I
right.
talk about owning your data, owning your audience, what I mean is, do you have ways to reach those people that have become your fans? And if you don't, you need to start building up that list, an email list, a text list, a customer list. And that goes a little bit further. There's so many artists out there, especially larger artists who have had, label deals and managers, and especially throughout long careers where their data is just segmented all over the place. A
Mhm,
third party merch company might own their store and they just are licensing it. And they don't actually own the customer list, so they can't have it and contact it, and that becomes really challenging over time. So that's what I refer to when I'm referring to like owning your data and owning your audience. Is, do you have the ability to retain that information if all social media went away tomorrow? Do you have
mhm.
a way to get in touch with your fans? That's like the first question, the simplest way that I like to think about it. Certainly it goes way deeper than that, about like actually owning your e-commerce platform, owning the tech that's built for you, your infrastructure. Is it actually yours, or is it a third party that owns it, or something like that? These are the things that I like to think about. And it benefits you in a number of ways than just the direct to fan side of things as well. If you have a big email list, I was just talking with one of our clients fairly recently, one of their managers who was working on a partnership deal with a big streaming company. Actually, it was like an entertainment streaming company. And he was asking me, hey, how big is our email list? How big is our customer list right now? I need to know because I'm writing this into the deal because
Yep.
it's leverage for us. And
Mhm.
these are also the kinds of things that it's worth considering, is like when you own that data, you have leverage when it comes to partnerships. Again, this goes back to like not being taken advantage of in an industry that takes advantage of creators.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just it's being smart about it
For sure.
and planning ahead. Even if you're just starting out, I think if you can position yourself in a way that you control your data, so to speak, as you grow, because everybody wants to be big, right? So let's just say when you become big, you're already in a position to control a lot of that data and, like you said, leverage it. I
100,
love that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember the scare when TikTok was getting taken down?
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
the absolute panic that people were
Yeah.
going through because their livelihoods were going away all of a sudden, and it was quite a thing to see for a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, so I had so many conversations around that time, and it happened twice. You know, it happened twice that there was the TikTok going away scare, and it's like, okay, the second time around, we still haven't learned. We're still freaking out over here.
Yeah, yeah, let's get the data
Yeah.
in hand. Well, let's take that to now streaming a little bit. Obviously, the industry has shifted, and it's a very heated topic right now, the topic of streaming and how artists are getting paid and fair or not, etc. So, but that is, I think, one example of, I understand it's a means to an end. I mean, the artists need to do that because that's the technology we're in right now. You can't really get around it generally, but I guess my question is, what are ways you've seen artists utilize the direct communication to curb that cut in income for streaming sales?
Yeah. It's a great question. I now view streaming as a revenue source, kind of as a necessary evil or a necessary
Mhm.
good, depending on how you look at it. Because for artists, especially with artists with growing or larger fan bases, you will have some baseline of revenue that comes from streaming. And that's good. That's a good thing that it's there. The position that I often take with it when I advise artists is that that is not an active revenue stream. It's not an
Okay.
active monetization pathway. And here's an easy way to think about it. When fans stream your music, they don't really think that they're supporting you. They don't,
Mhm.
there isn't a, they don't know that they're transacting with you because they're not. They are Spotify's customer in
Mhm.
this case and not yours. And so while I think that streaming is, again, a necessary evil or a necessary good, depending on how you look at it, it provides a baseline of revenue for many artists, maybe not enough artists. We certainly could have that
Sure.
conversation for sure. I think there's streaming inequity for sure. And I'm not the one who's in the position to argue how that's going to change or whether that's ever going to change. But what I will say is, again, like looking at things like direct to fan, the difference here is you're going from passive to active, where now you've got fans that you can contact, whether that's contacting them via your social media presence, because that's where you got them right now, or
Mhm.
things like your email list, your text list, so on and so forth, your customer list. But what's cool about direct to fan, direct to consumer is tomorrow you could go make an offer to those fans and spike your revenue.
Mhm.
You can't do the same thing with streaming. You can't create a flood of listeners that will, make you 5,000, 10,000, $20,000 tomorrow with an offer.
Mhm.
You're not going to do that. And so I don't necessarily say that direct to consumer can beat streaming, but what I often look to it as is, again, like it's the difference between streaming having being a baseline of revenue, and for some artists it's a lot, and that's cool. I'm glad that it's there for them, but if it
Mhm.
dried up, what are you going to do about it? You
Mhm.
got to drive a lot of people to streaming to make up for streaming drying up. Wouldn't it be just as easy to sell some cool stuff to your fans and start
Mhm.
making revenue actively? That's the way that I look at it and how I
Mhm.
often advise artists about it.
Mhm. That really makes me think of the word control.
Yeah,
We're artists are constantly relying on systems they can't control, that they have no control over, let's say,
for sure.
so you're constantly putting yourself in a position of environments you cannot control. Now, some of it's the nature of the game, but in this context, it's again, how do you start pivoting into positions that you can control? How do you start building internal systems for income and money management and that helps keep you in control, right? Yeah. I
Absolutely. Yeah.
We talk about that with finances too. When I talk to artists about finances, since this is about um, a podcast about money in the music industry, when I sit down with artists and have these conversations about finance, we have that very same conversation, and it's
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
look, where are we placing our money? Not what are we doing to produce income. That's different, a little bit of a different conversation, but where are we placing the money we've now made?
Yeah.
you know, we do the same thing. We start placing it into vehicles that we don't really have control over. We start going, oh, let's put it in some high risk investment. Well, you have no control over what happens,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
on the flip side, let's start leveraging debt, bad debt. Let's start using debt. Well, who's in control of your money now? The bank, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. For
let's
sure.
see if we can position you in a spot where you actually have control over your finances
It's
and
two
you can
sides of the same
direct that.
systems coin.
Yeah, it really is. It really
Yeah.
is. Let's talk for a second about advice or stories you may have for artists and their teams who are looking to get off the revenue roller coaster. Just
Yeah.
here's some very basic things. Let's talk about the guys. Let's compartmentalize it a little bit. Let's talk about the guys, as you might put it, maybe under the 500,000 followers kind of thing. They're building, you're growing, but I would argue also that maybe even having less followers under 500,000 isn't necessarily an indicator of how good your music is, right? It's not a
Oh, no, not at
indicator
all.
of how successful you are, even per se.
No,
It's an
not at all.
indicator of your online marketing, perhaps, or your online presence.
Definitely. It might just be a matter of like how far along you are. You
Yeah.
haven't you're building towards a critical mass of audience, but you're not there
Hmm.
yet.
Hmm. Hmm.
A few tactical things that I think are worth considering for artists of all size to think about when it comes to this feast and famine revenue roller coaster that I would look at, generally speaking, is like if you're an artist or an artist manager and you're thinking about your artist and you're wondering, okay, I've got this baseline, I've got streaming revenue coming in, we're doing some touring, maybe it's starting to make a little bit of money or it's breaking even. What can we be doing on this level of active monetization efforts? What can we start thinking about? The first place that I would look to is first I would look at, and I consider like three axes of audience growth and development for artists, and those fall into three categories. It's getting attention, capturing attention, monetizing attention. And for artists that are growing and starting to get momentum, the two to be thinking about and kind of auditing that I would recommend are, what are you doing to capture the attention of the audiences that you've been getting, and then what are you doing to monetize it? So ask yourself, what am I doing, have I been doing, and could I be doing to build up direct contact with my fans? That might look like, do I have a strategy in place for just DMing my fans, getting into the messages with them on social media? One way to do it, going hand to hand. What do I have happening to build up a subscriber list on email and on text? What are you doing to make that happen? These are the kind of things when it comes to capturing attention. Additionally, with that is like, what kind of consistency are you bringing to your online presence beyond just getting the attention, viral moments, and content that, stops people from scrolling? Are you a ghost town apart from that stuff online? Are you going live? Are you posting consistently? Are you using stories effectively to communicate what you're doing in the day to day so that once someone has enough interest to possibly become a fan, do they have a reason to stick around? That all falls into like the capturing attention, owning your data side of things. And then on the monetization side of things, I think you bring up a really great question there, Jason. It's like, ask yourself just this simple question, like, when's the last time that I actually went out and tried to make a sales offer to my fans?
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself that, and maybe just put on the slate, like, this quarter I'm going to try to make 3 direct sales offers to my fans. Something in your store, a product that you're dropping, piece of merch, a reissue of a record, reusing variants of your most recently released record. I'll share an example with you guys with a client, about a client that we brought on at the agency a number of years ago, who was a fairly popular artist, had a big um, audience and a career in like blues and rock, but really didn't have too much going on the e-commerce front. We helped him scale that with paid traffic for his releases. But what was really interesting, how we helped him to tap into, again, getting off the revenue roller coaster a little bit, of then taking soft goods and vinyl variants of his record that was continuing to sell for a long album cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and taking, okay, this quarter it's going to be red and blue vinyl variants. We're going to sell those to the fans. Next quarter, it's going to be black and white vinyl variants and a new t-shirt design to go along with it. These are the sorts of things that you start to look at. How can I maximize the use of my existing product set, which I know is something that a lot of artists that are coming up struggle with. It's like, I just released a record. I don't have another one in the can. So, like, what am I supposed to do? I know this thing isn't old yet. These are the ways that you think about your offers and slightly varying them, making them a little bit different, and then marketing them again. And you get fans into a collector's kind of mindset then. This works really, really well. These are the kinds of things that I would be thinking about.
What have you seen in your career for artists? What are their top selling kind of products out there?
Physical music products, CDs, vinyl, cassettes, CDs and vinyl definitely being the leaders of that. Those are strong. Fans want to, when music is released and when music is being toured on and fans are discovering, they want to hold tangible
Mm-hmm.
things. And that is still the case to this day. And people are always surprised when I tell them that, but so much of the revenue that's generated by our clients is from physical music products, which is awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
happy that that's the case.
Yeah.
Uh, and then it's followed by merch, soft goods, t-shirts, hoodies, stuff that sells on tour, sells really well online as well. Those are like the two big categories.
Has there been any particular merch that kind of has risen above the rest that you've seen, or maybe one that caught you off guard? You're like, I didn't expect that, but this is a wildly good seller for across the board.
Man, that's a great question.
Wow.
There's not one in particular that comes to mind. Like I couldn't come to you and say like, yeah, hoodies just blow me away. Like I had
Yeah.
no idea that hoodies would sell so well. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll share some stories. I'll share a specific story that I think is really interesting. Uh, there was a band that we work with at the agency that when they were going back on tour for the first time after the COVID pandemic, this was around like 2022 ish. I want to say like mid 2022 ish. They were going back on tour for the first time, and we promoted a merch drop for a t-shirt design that was their back. It was going to be like their back on tour tee, and they weren't going to sell it on the road. And fans ate that up online because they were going to go out to the shows anyway and buy merch. But the fact that there was something being withheld and only being sold exclusively this way, people just loved it and they flooded right to it. So I say that to say less to do with the type of merch and more to do with the way that the offer is presented. If you have something
Create some
that you are,
demand.
yeah, if you have something that you can offer in an exclusive way using scarcity, using exclusivity, using urgency, limiting the numbers, all of that, all the elements that make up a strong offer. If you can use that online and potentially withhold it so that it really does, so that it actually is exclusive. These guys did not have these shirts on the road, so fans were really excited about it. When you can create great offers around your products, it doesn't really matter whether it's a shirt or a t-shirt, a shirt or a hoodie or shorts or hats. All of it can work really, really well. It's just about
Yeah.
positioning.
Have you seen much success with the autographed products?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Mhm.
Especially autographed and personalization. That kind of stuff works really, really well. I actually think that artists criminally underprice their autographed
Yeah.
product. If there's any advice that I could give to artists that are autographing records or merch, you should raise your prices on it almost 99% of the time, and you won't be
Mhm.
ripping your fans off.
Mhm.
Especially assuming that it's actually you doing the autographing and you're making it cool for your fans and it's not junk. Uh,
Right.
you should probably raise your prices on it. I remember like a couple years ago, we were working with a really awesome rapper at the agency and a huge audience. And I remember he said to us, like, I don't really know if fans would even care to buy a signed CD. And we were like, dude, of
Mhm.
course they would. Of course they
Yeah.
would.
Yeah.
Uh, I think artists don't think enough of themselves in that way. They really should.
Mhm.
It works great.
Mhm. Mhm. I think also don't be afraid to try, you know?
Oh my gosh,
The
yes.
worst that happens is, I mean, you do a small run of something and try it out, and if it flops, it flops. Or your timing sucked, or right, there's so many variables.
There are so many variables, and this is something that I think paralyzes artists from doing even the word flop. Like artists hear that and the hair on their arms goes up and they're like, flop.
Yeah.
That's scary. But
Yeah.
here's something that I think is worth considering when it comes to your marketing and specifically selling to your fans, but really any kind of offers that you're making, releases that you're doing, launches, you will learn as you go. So when something doesn't perform to the level that you wanted it to, you go back and you look at what exactly did we do? What were we expecting? What didn't happen? And why do we think it didn't happen? You go through what we call a postmortem process at the agency
Mhm.
of unpacking what exactly happened in a marketing campaign and what could we be doing differently next time. This is a process that we run with all of our clients whenever we run a sale, whenever we do an album launch, when we market a tour, literally anything that we do with our
Mhm.
clients, we'll run postmortems on it to see what could we do better next time. Did it
Yeah.
hit the goals? Did it not hit the goals? How can we change it? What went well? What can we do again? And if you do that, nothing is really a failure then. It's just a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And to add on to that, I mean, it was said, but even when you see something that happened very successfully, still it's beneficial to go back and review how can we do even better,
Yeah.
right? Even if it went so good, great, don't change a thing, or could we tweak it and improve it a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. And it's really good to catalog the wins and know what went well so that next time around you can remind yourself, hey, we did this really well. Let's use the playbook again and make it a little bit better. This is super important because artists forget and their teams forget about what worked. And then you do something that wouldn't quite work as well and you wonder why it didn't work as well. So yeah, it's important to catalog and analyze the wins and the things that did go well just as much as it
Mhm.
is to catalog the things that didn't go well.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Well, there's so much good stuff here. I want to give people a way to reach out to check out what you guys have going on online. So how can people see what's going on at Indepreneur, at IndieX, and
Yeah.
touch base?
Yeah, thank you. If you are an artist that has a big old fan base and you're hearing what Jason and I are talking about today and wondering how can I monetize this better? How can I build these e-commerce systems? We'd love to hear from you. You can learn more about IndieX at indepreneur.io/about-IndieX. You can check out what we do there. There's an application if you want to reach out to talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in just learning about this stuff and everything else that we do at Indepreneur, and how you might be able to learn or get some strategic help from us, you can go to indepreneur.io, check out Indie Pro, check out Indie Founder, which is our consulting level. And we've got a bunch of resources there. You can also follow us on Instagram at Indepreneur. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm always on there talking about this kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And you can feel free to DM me. I don't bite. I'm
It's
at,
true. It's true. He's
yeah,
always on there.
I'm at the Atlas Jack. And then if you want, there's also our podcast, Creative Juice, where Cirque and I are talking about music marketing topics every single week. So there's free resources there as well if you want to learn more about what's going on at kind of the cutting edge of music marketing. And those are all the places you can find us, depending on where you're at and what you're looking for.
Yeah. So they're pretty hard to not find, I'll say.
we try to
I'll
we
say.
try to be out there.
We're gonna put all of these links in the show notes wherever you're listening or watching this podcast. So that'll all be there for you guys as well. Well, Jack, thanks so much for sharing a little bit of your playbook and what you guys do. I think there's a lot of good information in there. I think there's so much value in what you guys offer, because musicians they get focused on just the music side, right? And we need to learn to build up the business side a little bit as well. And I think this is one of the backbones of building up that business, especially in today's day and age. So I love what you guys are doing out there.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, man. This was a blast. Thanks for the great questions and the great conversation.
Yep. Listeners, we covered a lot today around 4 big problems and the feast or famine cycle. We talked about looking at your music as a business, maybe some of the streaming that pays slowly and how to sub that out, and relying on systems you do not control. So if you want help building the direct to fan side, check out Jack and his team. We'll put links in the show notes and you will find it there. And when it comes to what you do with the money you do make, check out my free ebook, A Musician's Guide to Infinite Banking at 1024wealth.com/music. You will learn how to keep money accessible, keep it growing and compounding, smooth out that feast or famine season with the money you have, and self-fund releases, tours, gears on your own time. And when you want to talk through, book a call with me and we'll chat and help you navigate that way forward. So meanwhile, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share this with one musician who needs to hear it. And until next time, keep your money working and your music moving. Jack, thanks again.
Thanks, Jason.